UV and 50-50 discussing what they are going to do for the day. UV and 50-50 out in the streets on Toronto. UV and 50-50 chatting it up with women. UV and 50-50 decide it's time to turn things up. UV and 50-50 drawing more attention of women. UV and 50-50 decide it's time to really turn it up. UV and 50-50 having a good time conversing with the women. UV and 50-50 drinking and smoking in the streets of Toronto. UV and 50-50 drinking and smoking having a good time. UV and 50-50 drinking and smoking having a good time with the women. UV and 50-50 enjoying themselves, but UV senses trouble coming. UV and 50-50 enjoying themselves as the crowd of women gets bigger. UV and 50-50 having a great time and 50-50 gets more comfortable. UV and 50-50 after hanging out with lots of women waiting for bus. UV and 50-50 waiting for bus as the time passes by. UV and 50-50 getting on bus that finally arrives. UV and 50-50 on bus. UV and 50-50 on bus, and it starts to fill up with other people. UV and 50-50 decide to get a seat before bus fills up. UV and 50-50 on bus, and 50-50 is the first to sit down. UV is still standing as he looks around and scopes out the scene. 50-50 convinces UV that everything is good and he should sit down. UV and 50-50 both finally sitting and on their way to their destination. After a short time, UV and 50-50 reach their location. UV and 50-50 make their way to the bus. UV and 50-50 still have a long way to go. Good thing UV and 50-50 got off the bus. It is really crowded now. UV and 50-50 discuss the next plan of action. UV still seems nervous, while 50-50 is cool as a cat. 50-50 tells UV how he sure is happy to be off the crowded bus. UV and 50-50 make their way toward the subway. UV and 50-50 walking on street until they get to correct subway. UV and 50-50 finally reach the correct subway. UV and 50-50 waiting for the subway train to come. UV and 50-50 leaving subway station. UV and 50-50 discussing the long subway ride. UV and 50-50 both agree something they don't want to do for a long time. 50-50 informs UV they are looking for a BMW. UV is not too keen on driving, so lets 50-50 know he not driving. UV and 50-50 driving down the streets of Toronto. 50-50 behind the wheel and has his foot on the pedal. UV tells 50-50 to slow down, attracting too much attention. 50-50 blows off UV's advice and pushes the car faster. UV warns 50-50 again, but he continues in his ways. 50-50 does not drive that often and is not going to let the opportunity pass by to have fun. 50-50 really has his foot on the pedal and music blasting. UV and 50-50 discussing the next plan of action. Police sirens. UV tells 50-50 now you did it. 50-50 refuses to pull over and steps on the gas. UV and 50-50 now involved in a high-speed chase. UV tells 50-50 to stop the madness and pull over. UV and 50-50 argue as 50-50 refuses to stop. 50-50 tells UV not to worry, he has everything in control. 50-50 continues to push the car as if he is a race driver at very high speeds. UV informs 50-50 of what is ahead of them, and it's over. 50-50 starting to realize the seriousness of the matter starts to slow down. Police officers are everywhere. The police really start to close in now, and just like that it was over. 50-50 arrested in car, towed. As for UV,